Chairman Bernanke is one of the most powerful men in the world when it comes to your money. He holds the reins to our central bank, an institution controlled by both the public and private sector.
Hello, how are you?
Good, thank
Welcome.
you. Thanks very much for making the time. I know you guys.
What would life be like without the Federal Reserve?
We don't have to speculate. We know what it looked like because there was no Federal Reserve before 1913. During the 19th century, there were periodic financial crises where people would run on the banks and pull out their deposits, where the stock market would crash.
When most of us think of bank runs, we think of the stock market crash of 1929. But in 1907, a massive panic threatened to annihilate the economy. There was nothing the government could do to stop it, until billionaire J.P. Morgan and his rich friends tapped into their personal wealth to bail out the banks.
Which led Congress to say, look, enough is enough. We've got to have a central bank that can manage these crises. And that was the beginning of the process that led to the Federal Reserve.
You're in the Situation Room happening now. We're following breaking news.
Less than 2 years after Chairman Bernanke took office, he was faced with the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression.
In a panic, when people are pulling all their money out of financial institutions, what the central bank does is provide short-term loans, which help the banks stabilize. And that's what we did during 2008, 2009.
But what about those who don't agree with the Fed's actions?
They bail out Morgan Stanley and then Goldman Sachs. When I up, who bails me out? No one. And the Federal Reserve. And the fractional banking system. And the Fed!
If you ask most people, I think they would say that the Fed spent a lot of taxpayer money trying to stop the crisis and bailed out banks and that kind of thing. The fact is the Fed doesn't spend government money. What the Fed does is buy and sell assets in the market.
Those assets are U.S. Treasury bonds and government-guaranteed mortgage securities.
Or we make short-term loans, which are then repaid.
Loans repaid with interest.
In the last 3 years, the Fed has given the Treasury $200 billion. That's profit, that's not loss, that's not cost.
While decisions in Washington, D.C. affect the state of the nation's wallet, the Fed's 12 regional banks make sure there's enough physical cash to go around. Whether to fill new orders or replace your old worn-out bills, they call here, the Bureau of Engraving and Printing. Because when it comes to trusting your money, first appearances mean everything.
There are very particular rules for how we can shoot here. We can't show you the walls, we can't really shoot down the hallways, we have to keep it tight, and there's cameras everywhere. This is an incredibly secure facility.
The BEP fills annual print orders for the Fed. In 2011, that meant a whopping 23 million bills a day. And each bill gets a serial number and a code that tells which bank is charged for production.
If you look at any bill you have in your pocket, there's a small number and a letter together. Mine says C3. This series says F6. That stands for the Atlanta Federal Reserve Bank. And so you know that if the F and the number 6 don't correspond, F is the 6th letter in the alphabet, then that's a fake note.
Although it looks like money as it flies through the presses, it's not official until it's cut, wrapped, and sent to one of the 28 Federal Reserve operations centers around the country, where cash deliveries flow in and out by the ton. It's 7 a.m., and I just got dropped off in East Rutherford, New Jersey, at the New York Fed's Currency Operations Center, called EROC.
It's a neighborhood, you know, it looks pretty ordinary, except that in and out every day flows billions of dollars in cash. It looks like maybe a prison, could be a high school.
But what it really is one of the world's largest above-ground vaults. The entire facility is enclosed with a modest-looking fence. But don't let it fool you. This thing can stop a semi-truck dead in its tracks.
The building is also studded with over 800 cameras. They're watching our every move.
One of the beauties of the system is that when a door or an alarm goes off, it'll automatically generate that camera view onto our system, and that's how it's set up. That camera will turn and take a shot of wherever that alarm was, and some of the other cameras in the area, if they're pan and tilts, will also turn to the area of concern to make sure that we have extra eyes and a better quick view of what's going on.
And even if you got past all of that, you'd have to deal with this guy. The Fed has its own specially trained police force, and some of the facilities even have a private shooting range.
If the building were, you know, just by itself with unarmed guards, do you think that would be enough? It feels to me like a really hard place to break into, even if everybody here was just carrying sort of batons. Do you need the guns?
Absolutely. That's what makes us a hard target. You have to understand something, that we're not the ones that set the standards. The people who want to do damage to the facility or the people are the ones that do. We just react to what they do. Even though we're very proactive, we still don't set the standards the bad guys do.
If you've ever spent $1 in cash in New York City, that dollar has probably been through this building. This is the hub of all physical currency that would move through this area.
It's where your bankers bank. Deposits come in and withdrawals go out to the tune of millions each day. It's entered by the bagful into the Fed's accounts. It's then moved to a vault that can hold tens of billions.
This is $20 million in cash right here in 50s and 100s. Here's $300,000 in singles. Here's $1.5 million in fives. There's room behind me for 5,400 of these boxes, controlled by a robotic system.
It's like the movie Wall-E in here, except they're pushing cash instead of trash. The robots operate independently, guided entirely by laser positioning. And it's not just about security. They actually save the Fed money in manpower. Cash, especially coin, weighs tons.
Here, this is the reject reel. This is where any suspected counterfeit notes, wrong denominator, that reel.
At EROC, Bob Krause is in charge of the whole shebang.
Brought over here to the...
And what comes in and out of currency ops is his domain.
It's $1,000 in quarters.
This is $1,000 in quarters right here. Holy cow, that's a lot of money. That is. This is parking meters for the year for me.
And laundry.
And laundry, all done right now. Wow.
Oh, so this is where the nation's loose change ends up.
Do you find yourself sort of just personally casting pennies aside the way I do, or do you think about it differently than that?
Oh, I think about it differently, just like I think about the dollar bills differently. When I take my money in my pocket, I fold it up nice and neatly, whereas opposed to other people that don't. And the same thing with pennies. To me, it's all, you know, I have a different perspective on it.
In the real world, our cash takes a lot of abuse, but it still has a long lifespan. Thanks in part to a small team of stress testers in Washington, D.C.
American currency needs to be not just an enduring symbol, but it actually has to endure. The durability of money is part of the work of this lab, which is part of the Bureau of Engraving and Printing. And Virgil here is going to show me how much money can take.
Okay, the chemicals we use are 1% sulfuric acid, sodium hydroxide 2%, bleach, carbon tet may be used by a dry cleaner.
How long do these sit here?
We leave them in 24 hours, so we'll take them out tomorrow.
Wow, and it'll, after 24 hours in sulfuric acid, your 20 will survive. It'll still be a usable bill.
Yeah, oh, yeah. Yes.
Picked randomly from the millions printed, Virgil mimics what the average Joe can throw at his money. And then some.
We will soak this note in 2% sodium hydroxide, some denatured alcohol. If you please write 267 any place on the note. The Federal Reserve wants to know, and the people that use it, is this money going to handle ordinary use? Toss the notes in, please.
Throw them on in there, yep.
And we want it to be a square. We're going to roll it one direction.
Okay.
And put it in the crumple machine.
This bill goes through terrible things. Poor Andrew Jackson.
I don't see any ink loss on this one.
Note survives.
But cash does eventually wear out. And when it does, the Fed plucks it from circulation at currency centers like Iraq.
So what happens with these deposits, it goes through the machine, the sensors are checking for the quality of that money.
Right.
And it's through a series of light emissions in a note.
Yeah.
And based on that, it decides whether it's a good note or bad note.
Yeah, sure.
If it's a good note, it goes to the vault and it's recirculated.
Right.
If it's not, it goes into a shredder, it sucks down the tube.
No
and
kidding.
goes into
They destroy it right here.
Right here. Right
So
here.
when you say bad note, I mean, we're talking like a torn note, or
Torn
one that's
note.
got dirt, schmutz on it.
Worn.
Right. So, for instance, like if
Well,
I've
I can't really, you're not supposed to bring any money out here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But
It
well,
turns
so,
out that having
this
cash in your pocket
this
is a security
something
breach.
my wife gave me, right?
I love Jake.
Has a
Okay,
thing-
no.
Has a nice thing on it. This would get rejected.
That would be destroyed.
That would be destroyed.
That would be destroyed.
immediately.
I'm gonna have to
Pick
ask
that
you to
up.
put that away.
I'm sorry. Sure, I'll put it away. But so let's say that the kind of currency that I would have in my pocket, right, or that anybody has in their wallet, they, you know, I take it to the bank, I deposit it there. Eventually, all the money that people have in their wallets makes its way through a machine like this?
So at some point in time, I would think it would.
In rare and extreme cases, the Fed faces a job that is simply too big for the machines to process and shred. In the months following Hurricane Katrina, the Fed spent a number of weeks burning millions of water-soaked, moldy bills. In all, over 190 million worth of cash. The Fed's most important job during a crisis is to keep money available. Imagine if our ATMs ran dry. Yet when the unthinkable happens, moving money can become a logistical nightmare in an instant.
The aircraft involved this morning, American Airlines Flight 11, Boston to Los Angeles. That was the first.
What we're about to show you is footage captured on 9/11 from the many New York Federal Reserve security cameras.
We really never even got to that close to the building. The explosion blew and it knocked everybody over.
These images have never been broadcast before.
We're here, not 500 feet from where the Trade Center stood. And I remember it, even though it was more than 10 years ago, like it was yesterday, this incredible noise.
We started to see paper raining in the sky.
When the South Tower collapsed, there was this enormous dust cloud.
And then you felt the heat, you know, a block and a half away, through the window of that fireball. You could actually feel the heat against your face.
We looked up at our cameras and saw our officers. I think the quote was, "They're running, that's not good, why are they running?"
It was like midnight when that dust cloud enveloped this building. So what the officers did down on the ground floor is they changed the normal command